Well, welcome. Tonight we're going to look at life from the liberal side, but we're going to do a little change. Too many times we start with national politics and we end up staying there way too long, and we really don't give the local elections enough thought or talk. So tonight, after our introductions, we want to start with local first and give it plenty of time. So why don't we start with an introduction?
Sure. Chris Crane from the Milford Democratic Town Committee.
Carolyn Barthel from the Mendon Democratic Town Committee.
And Rand Barthel from the Mendon Democratic Town Committee.
Which local election you want to start with?
Senate race?
Senate race.
State Senate race.
State, our local government, Ryan Fatman and Tom Maroli.
So we have Brian Fatman, who's our Republican, currently in office. We have Tom Maroli, who is a candidate for state senate. And in a lot of ways, I think they have a lot of similarities. Very young, millennials. I think
Make
that's
you
where
feel
it
old?
ends.
I feel older all the
I
time.
was going to say, when you start referring to the two candidates as very young.
In fact, very soon, my mother has just decided to count her age backwards from now on.
I like that thinking.
But tell us, I mean, one of the beauties I've always loved about Massachusetts is that I have a hard time telling the difference between a liberal Republican and a conservative Democrat. I love the idea that we have this middle that actually think about issues and vote on issues. So how do you tell them apart?
Well, I guess the best way to tell them apart is, listening to what they say and then watching what they do. So with Ryan Fatman, to be honest, I don't think he ever came to my house to campaign. So he's not made any promises to me, but way he votes and some of the issues that he's taken a position on, for me, speak to him as more.
Well, let's go through, but the one thing I will say, the first election, I think this is his third now.
This will be his third election.
The first one, when he took on Dick Moore. I mean, Dick had been here forever. I think he and Abraham Lincoln had a debate at one point.
Probably, yeah.
But I mean, all kidding aside, Dick was a cornerstone of local politics. He was at every event. We saw him all the time. And he was considered one of those middle people. Yes, he's a Democrat, but I think we'd all agree sometimes you felt he was one tick to the right more
Fairly
than
conservative, yeah.
And yet Ryan seemed to have the energy, because he seemed to go to every dang house in Milford, maybe not every house.
He did a lot of campaigning. He worked the streets, he worked the houses, he did a lot of canvassing, from what I understand.
So, one of the questions that came up originally, I remember, when Dick Moore said, "What have you done as a rep? Have you done enough as a rep to deserve being a senator?" And there wasn't a big, long track record. Of, for 10 years I've been a rep and I've done all this. But a lot of people seem to be comfortable with what he's doing now.
Which is what?
Bringing money to Milford. I mean, we've had a lot of money come in for specific projects, Pheno Field, the park.
Was that the doing of Ryan Fatman or state rep as well?
See, I don't know. He and Brian on those projects, which I really like the fact that over the years we've had Republicans, Democrats, and they've put that aside to do what's best for Milford. I'm not sure about the other towns, but I know here.
So I guess the question is how much work did Ryan put into it rather than just sign his name off on it, and who did the grunt work?
I know that Brian has worked, Brian Murray, who's running for a state rep, he mentioned to me that he's actually he's passed some laws, sponsored some laws, and they've passed the House and the Senate, and he has brought money to Milford.
That's what I said, both of them. I don't think it's been
I don't know
either
how
or.
much, and how much.
Well, they're
Brian
both
Fatman's
in their
been
names
Right.
are told to us.
Of course.
Do I really know, did one do 49% and one do 51, or did one do 80 and another 20? I can't tell you because I
We're
really
not in a
don't.
position to know.
No, how would I know who could influence more votes? You know, but
So I guess the question I have is that, you know, there's a number of issues that have been troubling the area for a long time, and it feels as though that those issues have not been addressed. Like the way school funding has been done, Millville and Blackstone Regional School has been struggling for a long time. Where's the support for that? You know, I know that there's been a lot of issues on the soil in Uxbridge. There's been some dumping that's really contaminated the soil, and it's affecting the water supply. Where's the support and, you know, concern about that? Who's allowed the dumping? You know, there seem to be some cherry picking issues, and it seems to be spotty if you look at the whole Senate district. I know I spoke with somebody when I was out canvassing in Uxbridge, and you know, asked about what issues are important to this person, and she said, well, the senior center, I work there, and I know that's an important part that needs to be, that's important to me. And she said, you know, Ryan Fatman and Kevin Kuros come out there a lot to the senior center, and I said, what kind of support do you get from them? And she thought about it, and she said, well, nothing. You know, so, you know, that's good for the photo op. It's good to show up at these places, too. What else have you done?
But now, talk to me, and I'll be very myopic. Milford. You know, and I feel bad that these other districts are struggling, but we seem to get 47% of our school funded. Would I like it to be more? Yeah.
And I don't know, you would know better than I, the percentage that comes from the state versus the
That's what
town.
I'm saying, 47
And we have a lot
comes
of
from the
industry
state.
and stuff, so, you know, it helps the population. You know, schools are important.
I do know that Tom Morale does want to have the formula, which has not been for the school systems, for reimbursement from the state.
Chapter 70.
We've been talking about
contributions to the
changing
state.
Chapter 70 for 100 years.
Yeah.
Because not only Chapter 70, but the vocational formula,
Right.
we used to get less than a fair share, in my opinion, when I looked at the numbers at how much we were paying.
Versus what you were getting.
The problem becomes when you look at how they're going to redistrict it or recalculate.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to tell some of these small, wealthier towns that we're going to give you more money and take it away from the small. That ain't going to happen. You know, any time they try and rejiggle the numbers, it seems like it doesn't really deal with equity in everybody's eyes. I'm not saying it's fair. You know, should a Weston pay more? Well, how far is more? I mean, should you cut them off?
Maybe yes, more, but how much more?
And then now, if you ask people from
Because
Weston,
at the end of the day, you have to have a number.
well, if you ask people from Weston, they're going to say they're paying enough.
Of course.
And so will everybody else.
You know, do I feel bad that we get 47% and some of the big school districts get 80% of their school paid for?
And then for the regional school systems, like Mendon and Upton, the transportation has been
been an
pulled out
issue.
from underneath us.
And that was promised originally
Yep.
when those regionalized schools.
There's no,
were set up.
all the transportation costs are not
It's
helped
dried
at
up
all,
over the years,
subsidized.
hasn't it? Slowly, I think they've gotten less and
Yeah.
less. And that's been something that's not been addressed. So there's a lot of inequities. And there's a lot of, and just to jump on the other, charter schools. They take away a lot of money from the public schools. And yet they don't play by the public school rules, but they get state money. So how is that fair? And, you know, why are we pushing on more charter schools? And
But
I
now,
think
what
we-
would you say to a parent? You know, you're in the inner city, and the public schools system is not what you want it to be. You don't have enough funding to really do what you want. And you're going to say, well, yeah, but too bad, you got to suffer through it because we're not going to allow charter schools.
But why are we spreading our resources so thin? Why don't we fix the school? If it's, what's wrong with it then? What's the problem if it's underperforming? What's the issue?
Right.
And I know it's not always about throwing money at it, but let's not just say, okay, well, it's not working, so the hell with it. Let's do a charter school. That doesn't make sense.
What that does is it takes a minority of kids and sends them off to someplace that you know,
It's much
theoretically
better.
is going to get
Cherry
better.
picks who they can keep, though.
And so you're kind of playing favorites with some kids get a special deal that others don't. You know, there are equity issues there.
And the charter schools don't
and-
have to keep kids. If they feel like they can't educate them, they could send them back to the public school. How is that fair?
So then, you know, public school population gets sort of enriched, if that's what you want to call it, in kids who have extra
Issues.
expensive problems.
Right. Maybe we need to rethink, now I'm probably going to get a lot of bad, but maybe we need to rethink special education.
I was just going to
What,
say that.
what criteria is established to say some kids need extra? Are we, and it's maybe a rhetorical question, are we including way too many kids in the special
but
education umbrella?
Now again,
and-
think about Milford versus, sorry to interrupt, think about Milford versus some of the towns. We get hammered on the FinCom every year for being too easy on the special needs population. Because years ago, we changed the way we budget. Most towns give the school a fixed number and say, Rand,
is
you're
what
the, you're the superintendent, figure it out.
Kind of like a block
Make
grant?
this amount
Like a
work.
block grant.
Right.
Okay.
You know, in theory, the
Right.
block grant's going to be more efficient. Now, the problem we ran into years ago was that the special needs population, and I mean, these are kids who I feel are no more special, but no less special than the
Right.
other kids.
Right.
We got football players, we built them a football stadium. We got basketball, we built
Right.
gymnasiums. They just have different needs. But we changed the Milford budget to where we go to Kevin, the superintendent, and we say, look, you got to live within 2-point-something%. Talk to me about SPED and ELL, and we'll talk about a net number. So like last year, I mean, average year, 600,000-700,000 extra goes into SPED. Now, I don't know how to judge. I'm not an educator to say, Little Rand really doesn't need this. Now, in Big Rand's eyes,
Little Rand,
Little Rand-
he jolly well does
So-
need. Yes.
Yeah.
I feel comfortable with the Milford model
Okay.
that says, okay, it's a group of our kids. And last year, I think it was 680 extra, above and beyond, we threw in. Because again, a lot of people don't understand the formula, whether it's right or wrong, I can't argue it,
Yeah.
is set by the state. So if you get 2 or 3 special needs kids that come in and cost you $150 each, if you don't fund it, they still get funded. And then you take it out of your typical budget. And I've had a lot of people tell us that they envy the way Milford doesn't let the typical kids suffer. Because years
Get
ago we
lost.
had that fight
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
we got to do away with this, we got to do away with that because SPED went up.
Right.
I hate even thinking that we would play one set of parents.
Yeah. Against
But,
the
you know,
other.
again,
Right.
How
What's the
many
alter-
special education kids go to charter schools?
Don't know. I don't know. Now,
I don't either.
I would tell you that a lot of special education kids go to specific schools. Like if we can't take care of them in
Right.
Milford, they may go
They
to
kind of fail
an
downward. in other words,
autistic
Right.
center
Someplace
where
it's all
some
set up for
behavioral
that.
schools, some other schools that
we've
deal
got a
with.
guy in town, Bobby Littleton, who set up, God bless him, he set up the Evergreen Center many, many years ago to take care of the kids who could be harmful to themselves. And they have to live there.
There's a residential program
Oh,
that,
God. Talk
that
about,
the-
can you imagine?
And they have to be watched
not
over all
only
the time.
knowing that your child needs help, but not being with them because they got to live.
In a,
And I mean, Bob did great. God bless him for what he set up, and he expanded that across the state. But I can't imagine a more traumatic experience than losing my child
yeah.
on a day-to-day basis. Not that those parents could do anything.
Well, and if you are such a parent and live with that child for years, you may eventually reach the point where you kind of feel like you can't actually do what is needed for that child.
But see, to me, that's
And-
it's like a charter school.
You know.
You know, that's a special school,
Yeah, I don't
and we
agree
should
with
fund
that
it.
analogy, but go with
Okay.
it. But no, I see it as a different animal completely.
Oh, it could be, but it's taking away from If you don't fund it separately, it's taking away. Now, I don't know enough about charter schools. I read both sides of it, that it's only for special people, that it takes money out of the core budget. I can only talk about Milford. We don't do that. We're funding our school.
Right, but Milford, the charter schools impact the Milford schools too. There is money that gets siphoned over to charter schools from Milford.
And we end up having to make up for it in our regular budget.
Yep.
But I guess from my side, I don't feel bad that we have to fund a little, 62% of our budget goes to our kids.
No, I think that's good because, I mean, it keeps your value of your property up. People like to look for good schools when they move to a town. And that's one of the first things they look for. So I think it's a good thing to fund
But
it.
if
It's
the
how we're
state,
funding
if
it,
the
though.
state is cutting back on Chapter 70, and the towns don't have the ability to make up for it, I can see that being a.
Which is a lot of towns in this region.
I mean, I can see your point there, saying, if you cut back my Chapter 70 and I'm already at, capacity,
There's
what do you do?
No wiggle room.
Well, no, didn't you say Millville? They didn't do it. They
They
didn't
didn't
use
do an
No
override.
profanity. They didn't do an override. And what did they have to do?
Well, the senior center's cut.
Hey, think about it.
A lot of, the LOLs and LOMs, enjoy that company. My mom was one of them to, go out there. And she didn't vote for the override, but didn't realize the impact that
It would have.
it would have. And then she was very disappointed. And I had said, Ma, the override didn't go through. This is the impact. They got to pay for stuff.
Yeah. I have a hard time
So
relating.
again, where's the support from, I said, the legislatures, or if they can't do anything, but just kind of work with us here. So I don't know if people reached out to current people in office to say, we have needs here. What can you do for us?
Well, as we talk about over and over, I'll never ask you to vote. The 6 people who watch our show, I will never ask them to vote for a candidate. I don't think it's my place. But I'll beg them, 1, to vote, and 2, get to know Tom, get to know Ryan,
Right.
get to know Brian,
What have they
get
voted
to
on?
know
What's
Sandra.
the values and the issues that are
So
important to you?
Are they like me?
So
Do
your
they
vote is an
represent what I
intelligent one.
want?
Yeah. Well, there was, and some questions. I think people need to reach out to our elected officials. We hire them. The campaign process really is an extended job interview, basically. So rather than just say, gee, he's a nice guy, maybe he's a nice guy, but what is he going to do? And if he's been in office, what has he done? One of the things that Fat Man, my understanding was he did not vote was wage theft. So I'm just curious why he didn't support that.
Didn't vote for what?
Wage theft,
There's a bill to counteract or
protect workers.
protect workers from wage theft.
No, talk to me about wage theft.
Well,
What is that?
People not being paid for overtime.
or people like in the case of restaurant workers, the way if their tips are taken by managers, that's not
See,
supposed
to me,
happen.
that's clean. If I steal money from you,
Yeah.
That's theft.
last time, and you do the union, you know better than I. If I work more than 40 hours, aren't I supposed to get time and a half?
Correct.
So if Rand takes money from me, you're supposed to pay me $15 an hour. You only paid me 12.
Or
To me,
shift your hours to the next week so you didn't work
Same
the 40.
game.
Right.
I mean, one way or another,
Some-
if I'm entitled fair
Fix the books to.
to make
Right.
$100 this week, and you only pay me 80 or 90, I guess I don't understand. You're a thief. It's criminal. You should be
Right.
punished.
Into ways of protecting
well,
workers.
sure, and so there was, and I don't know the details,
I
but
don't either.
there was some kind of legislation that was presumably had provisions to make it easier to enforce that kind of, theft.
Well, when Ryan and Brian, that sounds Ryan and Brian, when
Right.
they come on next, that'll be a question I ask.
And ask about
Absolutely,
the bump
please
stocks,
do.
why he didn't want to ban bump stocks. So that was a bill that was
Now,
right
help
after.
me this whole gun control thing. Really, I don't understand. I'm a gun owner, to be transparent. I bought a shotgun when I was 15. Or my dad bought it for me.
Yeah.
I've had it forever. But I'm one of those silly people that believes in law-abiding gun owners. I go down, I have my fingerprints done.
My husband's a
your
gun owner.
license.
So,
He's got
you
a
know,
shotgun. He
I don't
hunts.
understand why I need a gun right now. You know, this thing about it takes 2-3 days or a week.
Or the red flag.
Why is that a big
red
deal?
Flag
Why is that a big deal?
legislation.
Well,
I don't understand.
look at the way it's marketed, because even on TV, those home alarm systems, they have people in black masks coming into your house, crawling into your
Right.
house.
See, as a gun owner, I have
mean,
no
it's that fear
problem
factor.
that if I want to buy a gun, I have to go down, I get my little...
Yeah.
If I want to drive, I got to go down to the registry, and that's probably the most painful thing I've ever done, and get a license.
Right.
Yeah.
So-
and not only that, the first time you do that, you have to show an officer of the law that you know what you're
drive.
doing behind the wheel.
So, you know, I have a real hard time when they say, I should have the right to buy a gun right now. If I
Where's
need a
the
gun
urgency?
right now,
What's wrong
What
with
are you
you?
going to do with it?
Maybe you're living in Afghanistan
I'm
somewhere.
going to a gun show next week. Okay, I got a week and a half. I'll go down. I'll have Tom O'Loughlin's guys do my credit, not credit, background check.
Right.
Right.
They come back and say he's not an axe murderer. He can have his FID
Right.
card. I just don't get it. Now, certain things, I don't like the line in the sand. You know, you can't have 100-round magazines. I don't understand why I need a 100-round magazine.
That baffles a lot of people.
Now, I'll admit, my neighbor and I used to go down Sunday morning to the gun range, do very bad things like smoke cigars,
Oh.
and shoot the guns. It just was an old man's thing to do. But I guess if I had to change, I mean, he had an AK-47. We changed the clip whenever we needed it. I didn't need to have 100, and I didn't understand why that was important.
Then why is a bump stock important?
You know.
Well, but a bump stock, what the heck would you ever use it for?
I have
To
no idea.
Well-
make it.
Well, if you want to kill a lot of people in a short amount of time,
That's the way
it's
to do
for
it.
efficiency.
yeah. I mean,
That's the way to do it.
So that was
The average gun owner, why would they want or need an automatic weapon? Now, for once in my life, I like going to a licensed range that has a license for an automatic weapon just to say I tried it. Okay, so I
That's
go
one
in.
thing.
I go into a place.
it's under controlled conditions
Yes.
and it's safe. It's you're safe. Other people are safe.
right.
So I have no
It's about
problem
safety, it
with
really is.
licensing it. There is a machine gun license you can apply for.
I had no idea.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you can get a.
How
I
about
think
a
it's
tank? Can you apply for a tank? What about a bazooka?
well. They passed a law in 19. I think it's 1987.
Right. You can't.
Which basically what it said was, you can't market new machine guns.
Right.
To
But
the
you can
public.
sell the old ones.
But ones that existed and were in private hands in 1987 were grandfathered
Okay.
under a special, more restrictive, harder to
But
get
if
license.
you wanted to buy one, you had to have the special machine gun license
Right, which
to have the right
probably
to buy it.
which probably has requirements about where you can use it and
And any
like
training?
Well, I would
restrictions.
hope so.
Yeah, well, we sure do hope so, yeah.
I mean, you're not supposed to fire a gun within whatever it is,
500
500 feet.
feet or yards?
Which is
Feet.
silly given the range of guns. I mean,
That's true. I didn't.
Right.
but yeah.
500 feet isn't that far
no, it isn't.
if
No,
you
it
got a
isn't.
Glock or a 308 or.
Yeah, I mean.
Now you're
these-
talking Chinese.
But see,
to
again,
me,
to me,
so-
no, but to me, it's the extremes.
Yeah.
Right.
When they passed the law that you're supposed to have trigger guards, I'm betting most people were like me and said, yeah, I put one on because I have people that come in and out of my house. And I don't want to take a chance that somebody's kid visiting me went down and played with a gun that isn't locked.
Right.
You know, my son-in-law has a
Right.
rifle. He has my grandson in there. And I care more about my grandson, but he has some kind of crazy lock that you can't use the gun without the key.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, there I feel comfortable. But a lot of these laws, I don't know that the criminals are going to follow them.
But the criminals never follow them. That's. I mean, you're not gonna.
But the key thing there is what the criminals do follow, because they kind of have to, is they can only get their hands on things that are manufactured and marketed, right? If it's not being manufactured, they're not going to get it.
Or it's going to be very expensive.
Or it's going to be really hard to get
Yeah.
because they're going to have to smuggle it from someplace that it is manufactured, or they're going to have to set up a basement factory to make themselves.
But
them.
now, if we start down the line and you say, if you were marketing Tom, which essentially you are, as a Democratic committee member, what would you say? You know, here I am, I'm in the middle, I don't know who to vote for. Why would I vote? And that's a question I asked Tom when he came on the show. I'm from Milford, why would I vote for you? What would you say are the reasons people should vote for him?
Because I think that Tom's frustration with what's happening now or what isn't happening, and the person in the current role, is that he's forgotten the community, he's forgotten the people. And he's been more out there and wants people to call him. He wants people to, you know, he's given out his cell phone number. He said, we need a conversation. We have to have like a partnership almost with the community. And all we can do right now is go with what he says. Obviously, he's not had an opportunity to prove himself, you know, but he's been in a union involved. He works as an assistant treasurer for the town of Mendon. He's on the Democratic Town Committee. He's been aware.
He got endorsed by the Massachusetts Police.
And the M&A, the Nurses Association. He's been going out to schools. And he's not telling people so much what he's going to do. He's asking them, what are your needs? And that's a healthy approach, too, because he's got to listen as much as he's going to talk.
Now, we always want more. I mean, let's face it, the schools. I've been one that said, I'd like every teacher to make $100 grand, but the union, I'd want 2 words, at will. So
We've
the
got it
bottom
now, unfortunately.
No, we don't. To fire a teacher,
Wait a
you got to
minute.
go through an act of Congress.
You know what? I disagree.
How so?
Listen, there's a process, and I full disclosure here, I'm still active and involved in my union. When I was working, and I was a union field rep, and then I was a regional vice president, I sat in on a lot of discipline hearings. Let me tell you, there were people that were fired under my watch.
Really?
Oh, absolutely, and it's very uncomfortable having to do the walk of shame as they're being escorted out the building. It happened. All the union can do is protect the process, making sure that management is doing the steps they need to hold the person accountable, and it's with cause. Because if a person is going to screw up, there's nothing I can do, because I pull people aside as representing them, and I'd say, what are you doing? Do you realize you can get fired for this? This one kid, I'll never forget, I had to be pulled out, and they said, we got a meeting in the corner office. So I go there, I had no idea what was going on. The worker's there with me in management, and apparently he was lying on his timesheet. Now that's forgery.
That's cause.
Of course.
That is
cause.
serious
So he's lying
cause,
on
yeah.
his timesheet that where he was, and at first I heard of it, and I said, okay, we need a caucus. I pulled the kid out, and I said, what the hell are you doing? That's, my role is, I should not be lying to him, saying, oh, we can get, no, what are you doing?
Right.
And I said, you can get fired for this. You need to pay that time back.
See, I'd like to see it a different way like we do in industry. It doesn't have to be for cause. I want to improve. So every year, bottom 5% gets replaced. You know, when years ago we went through RIFs, okay, it went by seniority.
What's RIP?
When you reduce,
Reduction in force is what it stands for.
okay, I mean
It's another
layoffs.
euphemism for layoffs.
You sit there and say, we don't have the money, we're going to lay off 10 teachers. Okay? I saw some of the incredibly, I can't use the word young, but inexperienced, energetic teachers let go because
I know.
they were young. They didn't have seniority. I'd much rather fight for extra money, but serious money. I mean, it kills me when I see, hey, I get 2 hours, or I used to get 2 hours a night if I'm lucky with my daughters when they were in high school. I cheated, I coached their soccer team so I'd get more. These teachers are getting 6 to 8 hours a day. I want the absolute best. And a lot of teachers have told me they had to sacrifice professionally or cut meat during the night to make a wage that they can afford. I'd rather see us pay every teacher 100 grand and say you got to fight for it.
So we're jumping around, going back to
Right.
the union in terms of, I just want to kind of bring it back to.
Until we get there,
Well,
we've got
you know,
unions.
I agree that there's some frustration. There are sometimes it can promote mediocrity. But I also feel that there is some control on the management side to, if they do the dance steps they're supposed to do, you know, there's a process they can get to hold people more accountable. But they get lazy and they expect other workers to drop a dime on each other.
Right. But now you take our reps, whether it be Ryan, Brian, Sandra, Tom, whoever's in that slot, they fight for more money. Is it by raising taxes? Because if they reallocate, like what your mother went through, okay, we're not going to raise our taxes, and somebody decided the seniors are less important than
Whatever.
the Jubobniks, Umbobniks, whatever the Bobniks are. This group we protected. Could be our kids, could be special, it could be something. I don't care what they are. But somehow the seniors paid the price because they lost their senior center. On the other hand, if you advocate what I call profanity, which is 2.5 increases, and again, this is Milford only. Because, it's like if I couldn't feed my family, my behavior might change. So if I couldn't make the budget, maybe I'd have a different view
Outlook, yeah.
versus 13 years in a row we've had a surplus in Milford.
Yes, I think Milford is very atypical of the region that we live in.
But now what do you say, Tom, Brian,
So
whatever
he
to
says,
say?
what can you bring in to help generate revenue in a town? What kind of businesses are you comfortable having in, and what's been done? And you also have to work with the selectmen in town too. So you've got, what other things can you think of besides just raising taxes to generate revenue?
And that is 100% what I love to hear. What else can we do? We had a lot of criticism over giving TIFs, the tax incentive financing. And I always had a very clean personal opinion. If you're going to build a building, I don't have a problem with you getting a TIF. Because that building will stay. Sorry,
The
but
building's going to be
we
there long
had a
after you
company
are.
come in, got a 5-8 year TIF. 2.5 years later, they built this brand new, beautiful building, and they left the town. TIF went away, but somebody owns the building.
Somebody else moved in.
I don't care if they moved in. Whoever owns the building is
paying
now
the
going to pay
taxes.
me
Taxes.
100%.
Well, and with any luck, they're actually doing something in that
That's even
building, and they
better.
might be hiring people.
That's even better. But
know?
I don't count on the effect of them hiring people. I want guaranteed
What's
tax
the
money.
expectation of the TIF? I mean, when a business comes in, is there a, say, okay, I'm going to bring this business in, I'm looking for a tax break, so we give them a tax break. What do we get besides?
See, and again, there's where you get into the debate.
Okay.
Philosophically, I'm way too conservative. You want a TIF? I want to know the building. What are you adding to my tax roll?
Okay.
So if, we had a couple companies who added on to their business. They could have added on to Milford, they could have added on a couple of communities around. But we're going to give them 3 or 4 years of free taxes. Not on what they're already paying. If they're already paying 20 grand on their building, that stays.
That
Okay.
stays, but
The new building expansion or a new building makes it 30.
Okay.
So I'm okay saying for a few years,
Still
we'll only
20.
charge you 6. Because 10 years from now, 5 years from now, whatever it is, you're paying 30.
Right.
I have a harder time when they say, well, we're going to hire people and the derivative value now, they'll spend more money in your, it's like, yeah, how do I measure that?
Right, exactly.
That's
So
motherhood.
maybe
and
they
learning.
work there, maybe they don't even live in town and they'll spend the money in there. How do you measure it?
And that's
Right.
why for me, TIFs are really easy. You're going to build something that adds to my tax roll, I like it. Then we'll debate how big.
I want something that's staying here.
Yes.
See, you're conservative. I can get my head around that, and I'm not a conservative.
Yep.
And you see, again, that's where I think we're different in Massachusetts because you can have, hey, she called me a conservative. Uncle Ed's going
Yeah.
to roll in his grave.
Actually, you are both a conservative and a liberal in my experience. At the same
Bernarelli's going to
time.
be dying if you call me a conservative publicly because he keeps calling me your
Well,
son.
you just referenced yourself as a conservative, so.
But I always do. I mean,
It's fine.
I'm one of those people that nobody will accept because physically, I know I'm a conservative. I wouldn't want all the people on the FinCom to be like me because we'd never spend enough money. We'd always be tucking it away. But socially, I get nailed for not following dogma. So, but you look
Then
at
maybe that's where we got to review and revisit kind of like how we label ourselves a little bit too.
Yeah.
We get so locked into these labels. I would consider myself, I'm more moderate fiscally. I don't want to waste money, although I do want to see it go for services because that's what we're here for. We're here as a community. Socially, I would consider I'm way liberal because I feel like, you know, why should we control what people do in their lives as long as it doesn't negatively impact me?
But again, the problem I run into is so many people, ever since I've been on the FinCom, have 3 questions. Are you raising to the 2.5 limit? No, haven't done that forever. Are you funding all the capital we need? Well, I'm biased, I'm head of the capital subcommittee, yes. And number 3, do we have a surplus? Yes. They go away. You know, they don't ask.
Okay.
They don't go beyond
What are you
that.
trading?
That's the limit of their curiosity.
It seems many, many people. So, you know, if you go to
Tho-
a
those are-
Brian or a Ryan and you say, I want more money for the school, okay, or the selectmen. Take an example people can get their hands around. If we used profanity and did a 2.5 override in Milford, well, what does that do to some of the seniors? These are the people who built this town for us, who, some of them, you know,
They're just
I don't know how they survive when I see $1,500 a month, you know, $1,300 a month.
yeah.
You know, so I'm really, and I know I have a biased view, but I really worry about not funding the senior center, the senior activities.
So now what do we do about that? How can we get our elected officials then to address this with the seniors to see if there's some way of people within a certain range holding back on raising taxes unnecessarily? There's got to be maybe a collaboration and a way of addressing that. So that way, when that happens and when there has to be an increase or an override, that there's a safety net for some of these people that need that. In other words, we look at some of these problems, oh, what are we going to do? Well, aren't there other options that we could have? Isn't that why we have people elected into office to try to address some of these things?
And that's the key. I mean, we have a program where a lot of the seniors, very talented still, very able to help. And if they'll put in hours, because the one thing a lot of the seniors have
It's time.
Is it ours?
is time.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry if I've insulted anybody, but they have more time than we do. And if they put in that time, they can get up to 50% of their taxes
Right.
knocked off. I think it's great.
And what about people that are not capable of physically of doing that?
Accounting, we need help filing. I mean, to me,
That's a great incentive. Is that something that's being done now?
yes.
Okay.
But again, we take care of it in every year. Why are you putting $70,000 the money towards? Because I owe these people. You know, when Milford was growing up, they were building our town. Now, they hit a point where they don't have enough money for everything. These are our mothers, our fathers, it's like the, we can't call it geriatric authority anymore, countryside. You know, people have always said, is that part of Milford? Well, technically, no. But let's be serious.
Because it's a privately owned?
Well, we let them borrow money on our bond rating, and everybody said, well, why would you do that? They're independent. That's our families in there.
You actually want that place to work.
And if you
because-
didn't, you want to tell me you'd be kicking out? I mean, at this point, I got my mother in there,
Right.
right? But
Yeah.
you'd be kicking out people's mothers and fathers and grandmothers from Milford? God, shame on us if we ever let.
And you're conservative and you care about other people?
Well-
Wow, that's
Well,
a concept.
well, actually, there was a time when being conservative actually did mean
Conserving.
caring about and conserving things of proven value.
But see, to me, you squeeze everywhere you can so that every once in a while you can splurge. You know?
Kind of like on Pheno Pool?
Yeah, like Pheno Pool. I mean, that's been an ongoing debate for many years because the previous chairman had an absolute logical plan. Shut the Pheno field pool down,
Chairman of the FineCom.
chairman of the FinCom, and just use the free KC pool. And then there was me sitting there saying, you can't do that. Pheno Field is Milford. That's where we all grew up. And, you know, I joked about,
Right.
this is terribly sexist and I apologize, but you were a man when you could swim across the middle to the pier. That first time you touched the pier,
Yep.
boy, I made it. You know, how many of us behind Votolato Field, Mark used to laugh at me when I said, that's where we got our first kiss. As you'd walk behind the field.
Oh.
That's where we got our first kiss. You know, when I wanted to take my grandson down to a pool, Pheno Field has trees, picnic basket came with me. You know, Yogi Bear in the picnic basket.
That's
and
right.
We had a place to be. Casey, it's sterile. There's not a tree there. It's all
Cement.
cement.
Yep.
So, you know, again, is the money that we're going to spend on Pheno Field insane? Oh, God, yes. When you talk $3 to $5 million, you can't do that
Where are
through
you going to
logic.
get another venue like that?
Yeah.
For that kind of
Oh,
pool?
but that's emotion.
Once you have it,
It's
That's pure
beautiful.
emotion. I
It
mean, now
is.
you're talking about
But think
saving
of all
part
the
of Milford.
people that can't walk to Casey. It services a big population too.
But that was my argument. Don't talk to me logically. I will concede that logically, nah, shut it down.
Part of it is what program contributes to the community? What benefits the most people? What
something you can't really measure as much.
Right.
But Carol, in Milford, we had the first article we always went through is fireworks at Town Park, not Town Park, at the dump, Plains Park, right? And every year somebody would look at me and say, how can you make that motion and support it? You know what we could do with that? I said, yeah, I do. But on the other hand, I also know that there's a lot of people. I did it once, and I was lucky enough that I could put $300-400 away for a night to go to Boston for the fireworks. But not everybody can. And I'll tell you what, I'd pay $300-400 to not go to Boston, because when I go to Plains Park, it's my neighbors.
it's everybody
the
you
school.
know. Yeah.
It's
everybody.
Milford.
That's right.
Part
It's
of our
a community
culture.
The whole
program.
So,
town
you know,
comes
there's
out.
certain things, the Santa parade. How can you justify a Santa parade? We have to pay overtime, we have to pay people to clean it. There's certain things you do. You know,
it
when you
feels
say
good.
taking care of the people who are trying their best. Now, if you're a lazy bum, I owe you nothing. I'm sorry. You know, if you're not going to try and help yourself, then I don't think I owe you anything. But there's certain people that just can't. And they're part of our community. And we've got to find a way of making sure
that they're included.
that we take care of them. You know, like I said, just like
Boy.
my grandfather when he came with his $32.80.
Listen to this bleeding heart liberal here.
Oh, booey.
That's right.
Liberal, yuck.
All I can think of is that Groucho Marx line. When I came to this country, I didn't have a nickel in my pocket. Now I got a nickel in my pocket.
But you know, that to me is Milford.
Yeah.
We've always, you know, we had the big argument about what the state legislature is demanding we do for our kids. I felt good to get up and say, you know, frankly, Scarlett, I don't give a damn what they say on Beacon Hill, and I don't care what they say on Capitol Hill. Milford's never needed somebody
To tell it
tell
what
us
to
how
do.
to take care of our families, our kids.
Because we've been doing it.
But we need to be prepared for those that are not going to defend that as much down the road. Suppose you get somebody who is more about, well, logic and no heart. That sometimes it's good to have that oversight to say, this is what you have to do.
Well, I mean, I'm happy there are the people, the uber liberals on our committee that want to spend, because they pull me towards the middle. You know, and I know I won't spend enough. I know my limitations.
Yeah.
I can't do it. I
So
want
it's
to
good to have that balance.
But-
You kind of
But you
like
have to
put
respect
each
both
other's
sides.
checks.
Right.
Well, ideally, that is nice to be able to respect each side and hear each other's arguments and then try to come to the middle and do something that's going to benefit everybody and hurt as less little people as possible. But
I have visions of the uber liberals in the committee holding on to you and grabbing and trying to pry your fingers loose from their death grip on some dollar bills.
You should have seen their heart attack
Shake
when
them upside down and get
when I
that
made the
change out.
proposal about the sports fields. I said, let me put a couple $100,000, let the committee put a couple $100,000 away for 4 or 5 years, then we'll have enough. And they looked and said, you're promoting spending? I said,
Yeah.
when we need to.
Right.
That's the whole point.
well, one's needs are who defines need.
But isn't that why you get appointed or elected? You know, you may believe we need to spend money no matter what. You may believe we don't need to spend any money. And hopefully there's somebody in the middle. And we're all, if I get to know you, I'm going to vote for the one I feel most comfortable with.
Well, there's other things too besides spending money or not spending money.
Like?
Wage protection, how is that spending money? Like bump stocks, how is that spending money? That's just legislature that's going to protect people. and it's not about how much you're going to spend.
Again, I may be naive. I'm not the quickest one, but wage theft. It's like I'm going to pass a law that says you must follow the law.
I don't know what the details in the
There
language
must be
are,
something
but
to
the
it.
point I'm making
Yeah.
is it's not about spending money.
No, that's just one facet.
Right. So there's many different facets of why you want someone to come in. Not only spending money, but how else can you support our community besides showing up for a photo op?
So we're going to have an interesting rep senator race.
I'm hoping that there'll be
Well,
a
it's a
debate.
real race.
Oh,
It's a
it
real
is.
race.
Well, put
Because
it this way,
Tom is
I
doing-
will offer, I've had Tom on the show. Obviously, I have Ryan on the show, but not as a candidate, but just view from the Senate. Same with Brian. And obviously, Sandy's been on the show the last time. I'll have them all on.
Yeah.
But then I'll invite them to come on, like we always do, and have a candidate night.
That'd be great.
And to me, my candidate night is set up to be a discussion to let people from Milford learn about the candidates. I'm not trying to zing anybody. I give them the questions ahead of time,
Okay.
you know, to say, here it is.
Right.
You know, I
Open
want
book
people.
test.
Well, but they should understand who you are. And are you like me? Do I feel comfortable with you or more comfortable with you?
Right.
And if I can accomplish that, I
Then
think
you
I've
will-
brought some value.
Absolutely.
Now, what's going to happen in the governor's race?
Well,
I don't know.
So, Charlie Baker, tell me, what has he done?
Well, the impression is that, number one, he kept his campaign promises,
Which is,
fiscal responsibility.
but we've got a crappy bond rating.
Yeah,
How
I
is
don't
that
get it.
responsible?
I don't get. It's like everybody's
first time in,
screaming
like,
Trump
30
is
years.
killing the economy, yet the economy seems to be doing well. So you know the crappy bond rating. I don't get it.
I
It's
don't
like
know.
I just read that we're doing better in our tax collection than we even hoped.
That's right. We had,
And then again, not being a liberal spender, I was very happy when I heard we're going to put some away for a rainy day.
I think that's a good
Yes.
idea too,
You
sure.
know, I mean, it's what we do every year.
Does that mean I'm conservative?
You know, be careful.
actually,
There's a streak, but
Yeah.
we'll have, like last year, $3-ish million in a surplus in Milford again. And we put, our chairman led the movement to put 1.8 back to the tax rate. Oh, a lot of people are upset, saying, we could spend that money. Yeah, you could, but wait a minute. We put $500,000 or more towards our rainy day fund that we call stabilization. I think all told, we got about $30-odd million tucked away in different funds in Milford, just in case. And when people keep asking me, why are you doing more? There's school coming. We just did a $60 million school
Yeah.
without doing an override or a debt exclusion. That's
Right.
something I think all Milfordians should feel proud.
that is actually a major achievement.
It is.
And 8 years from now, we're going to have to redo the high school.
So let's get back to Baker and his promises.
Well, it seems like, I mean, one of the things from a social point of view, I know a lot of people are very pro parenthood. A lot of people are against it.
Planned Parenthood, you mean?
Planned Parenthood, they're
Okay.
pro Planned Parenthood.
Okay.
A lot of people are against it. It seemed like when the feds cut the money, he said, no, I need that. It wasn't about abortion, at least that's what I read. It was about, there are certain women, especially not affluent women, who count on Planned Parenthood
For a lot of their medical
lots
services.
basic
of health
services.
Right.
Absolutely.
You know, and I mean, my understanding is there's a federal law that you can't use federal funds for abortion.
Correct.
It's called the
right.
Hyde Amendment. It's been around since the 90s.
Yeah.
So to me,
And
that's
they
a red
don't
herring.
use it.
Right.
Right.
That seems like a red herring. And I got to
It is.
admit, I was really happy when Charlie got up and said, I think the best thing for Massachusetts is to keep it open. So that's one. I don't see.
That was a campaign promise to keep Planned Parenthood
No,
open?
but it was a campaign promise to take care of all Massachusetts residents. You know, I'm not looking at, I don't think he ever made a campaign promise to take care of the sliver. Because it's a small percentage. But again, it's us. It's people from Massachusetts. They have a special need. We take care of them.
Wasn't he going to send some people down to the border for Border Patrol?
Yep.
There's something about that.
He sent down
He was
a
going to.
couple of people from National
Guard.
Guard and a helicopter.
That's to support Trump's wall.
And he
He had to back down on that
Yeah, he had to back down.
But he backed down.
after
Yeah,
some
after-
pressure.
But I mean,
Well,
the good news is
scream
he
bloody
backed
murder.
down.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think you saw
So-
Trump back down.
No.
It's a
No.
different animal
Now,
completely.
again,
Yes, he's not the
you know, when you
same
look
as
at
Trump.
the border, I have a hard time saying we don't want to protect our borders. How we're doing it can be up for debate.
Yeah.
But this whole idea of let's just have open borders,
Nobody's
Nobody is actually
to me,
saying that.
again, a red
Nobody's
herring.
Why,
proposing.
why does it have to go from one extreme to
But
another?
that's the red herring to me.
And that's how
There
it's
is-
framed. That's
there-
how
there-
the issue is framed.
There is the potential to have an intelligent conversation about how much of what kind of immigration we should have and how much enforcement we should try to do of people who try to get around the rules, right? And how much enforcement is actually good for the country versus, doing more harm than good. But that's not a conversation we're having right now. Right now we're having a conversation that is basically about feeling threatened by all these brown-skinned people who speak Spanish, and and seeing them as some kind of threat to the nation, which is
Careful,
nonsense.
you got brown-skinned kid who spoke Portuguese.
I know, precisely.
Exactly.
I'm ridiculing the concept that would have been applied to you if you had showed up now,
Sure.
younger, instead of a long time ago.
And I mean, that to me, the problem is you're not talking about the root cause.
Right.
Now it's brown, it's blue or red, and
all
there's
the-
no purple in between.
It's all fear factor and kind
It's all
of
fear
like,
and tribalism.
Right, right. But getting back to even Charlie Baker, there've been a few blips now, but generally,
People are not happy about the MBTA.
Will they ever be?
now the way
We can do better.
He's-
New York City is investing, I guess, it's an article
No,
that
but
I
Carol,
haven't finished.
I
in
agree with you.
billions. We have the oldest,
Yes.
system in
the
the
oldest
in the
public
country.
transportation in the country.
Would we be happy, and I'm just playing devil's advocate, if he took money away from the schools to put for the MBTA?
What he's done is he's taken money from the fare increases and he's paying back the big dig. And he's not investing and putting money into it, he's letting it fail and justifying to privatize. That's my opinion. That's my feeling is that, and he's chipping away, and if you talk to anybody that works for the MBTA, they've been pushing back and fighting and trying to get the services and the support they need, and that's been
Well, we
drying
had
up.
the argument when Deval came on the show. Oh, I said, okay, you're stumping for a $2 billion tax increase. Will the people on the West
Get anything?
see anything?
Yeah.
I mean, right now it
Right.
seems like everything goes inside of 128.
Right.
Right. Which is something that we haven't talked about gubernatorial candidates really on the Democratic side, but there are now two candidates, and
Jay Gonzalez and Bob Massey
and we're
that
not,
are running.
and the three of us don't completely see eye to eye about that, actually.
We actually have
But
a
you know
difference of
something?
opinion. But each
That
of them
may
are
be a legitimate point that, I mean, you have in with the Democratic committee. We'll invite them to come to Milford,
Absolutely, do it.
you know?
they are.
Absolutely.
I'd love them to come on and meet the Milford people and spend 58 minutes talking about, okay, if I have Baker and Karen Polito versus you, why?
What difference is it going to make to
Why
me?
would I vote for you? Here's a no, and let's face it, Sandra, Tom, they're got some doubt there because I don't know what they'll do. I can hear them, just
They're
like
not
when
known
Ryan,
quantities.
when Ryan ran against Dick, I'm nervous a little bit because we don't know what he'll do.
Well, if
right?
it was any basis on what he did as a state rep,
There we had the state
we
rep,
had something.
he
but
didn't do a lot as a state rep.
But now you turn around and say you got two gubernatorial candidates.
Mm-hmm.
There's a doubt. I don't know how they'll do.
Someone new has always got to prove themselves a
That's
little
my
more.
point.
That's right.
But look at Jay Gonzalez and Charlie Baker have a lot of parallels too. They were both A&F guys under previous administrations. They were both CEOs of
So
healthcare
explain what
organizations.
your
Administration and finance.
Right.
Under the
Well, they both come from a solid finance background. Whether you're running a health company or another company, you got to meet payroll, and you got limited funds. And as long as they view that in the state job, I feel comfortable that it is limited funds. Because you give to one, you're taking away from another.
or trying to be creative and generating it elsewhere in other ways?
They're both healthcare people, yeah. And the challenge with Bob Massey is that when I've told people he's not a politician, well, they say, well, is he a businessman? Well, he's not a businessman either, but he has created. He's worked on national level. He's worked on a global level to implement policy, and he's done it very successfully. He just went over to France to get an award for what was an idea that nobody said could be done.
But again,
and he did it.
I would welcome an opportunity to have them come on and talk to both Democratic, or any new Republican. I don't know if there's going to be a Republican challenger, but
Well, isn't what's his name, Scott
Lively?
Lively?
Scott Lively.
Is challenging
You
the
going to have him
governors?
on?
Yes, he's doing primary.
I would welcome him.
Oh, I didn't realize Charlie Baker had a primary.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he
he's
does.
being primaried.
Yeah, because Lively made 15 or 20% or whatever the cutoff is
Okay.
at the Republican convention. So
Well, the whole primary thing in Massachusetts is what forced a lot of us. I hate the word unenrolled. It makes me feel like I don't care.
right.
But I want to
Independent.
choose because realistically, if I want to vote in the Democratic primary and still look, maybe someday there'll be 2 Republicans running for something and I can vote in that primary. I want the choice. And it just annoys me that they're calling me unenrolled.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's where
I
maybe
like
ranked
the
voting might
independent.
be
Yeah.
an option to kind of allow that latitude with the voting.
But overall, I know you'll hate me for this, but I don't think the Dems are any better than the Republicans or any worse.
I agree.
As a
They
group.
both, as a group, we'll talk about the Supreme Court next, because that's got me scared to death.
Yes.
This whole idea of the 51 votes that
Yeah.
you need infuriates me, because I'm surprised that Trump didn't pick an uber right, because he's not going to get any Democratic votes, and his vice president will cast the 51st vote, and they're done.
He's
pretty
proposing the candidate who will make him king.
He's the candidate who really doesn't think that there should be any kind of law enforcement of
That
the
he's above the
president.
law.
He's too
And-
far from me.
Scary
But I
So
was even
that's-
scary more that. But eventually, what happens when the Democrats win? They'll propose uber left, because they'll have to use their 51%. And I'd
Exactly.
rather say no. You play nice in the sandbox. It's 60%, and you got to figure out how to put people like a Kennedy more towards. I know you'll call him right, but to me at least,
No, he's not right.
he was middle.
He had a
So-
few.
He's
But I
right-ish.
think they end
Guys.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to end.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Next
run
time,
out of time.
I'm glad we had the chance to talk local. Next
Yeah.
time we'll talk starting with the Supreme Court, because I don't think people really understand when you put a very young justice.
Yeah. Last
He's going to have many decades to impact.
decades.
And as always, won't ask you to vote for any specific candidate. We'll beg you to vote. And part of that responsibility of voting is get to know, whether it's Ryan, Brian, Sandra, Tom, figure out who they are in your mind and then vote for the one that you feel most comfortable with. So as always, thanks for watching. Good night, and may God bless.
Far too